When God gave the nations the church, he gave that nation the answer to their problems. Because God's kingdom is not just a spiritual place. What you don't know is that God's kingdom is a country. There's power in knowledge. There's power in information. There's power in knowing something. If you know what has been written concerning health, it is easy to claim healing. If you know what has been written concerning finance, it is easy to claim wealth. If you know what has been written concerning business, there are words in the scriptures that have...
You are into a life transforming experience as Pastor Prince Abah brings you God's word with deep insight and power. God bless you.
Reforming or reformation, education, and national transformation or national development. One is independent of the other. National transformation or development is dependent on reformed education. So in this paper, we are going to establish a nexus between a reformed education system and a national transformed society. We will introduce the subject matter and do some explications on conceptual discourse. Then we will establish what we mean by a reformed education system. What do we reform? How do we reform? What do we want to have in the reformation? And what will be the resultant effect of a reformed education system? That is the guideline of what we're going to do this morning in the next 45 minutes to an hour. By word of quote coming from me, the historical foundations of our nation have been taken for granted. Thus, little effort has been made in our history to harness the bountiful harvest of our political, economic, and cultural potentials to our national advantage. A well-structured education system, therefore, and a consciousness of the dynamics of our history will promote the development of the feeling of patriotism that will in turn navigate the much desired national transformation and national development in Nigeria. Over time, and since independence, successive governments of Nigeria had at one time or the other expressed common desire and commitment to bring about socio-economic and political development that comprehensively can translate to national development. These desires had always found their expressions into several reform policies and programs of government. Reforming Nigerian nation, hitherto, and had always been a clarion call. Thus, Nigerian nation and her people have long before now grappled with the challenge of achieving national development and transformation. Hence, historical research has it that Nigeria started her journey towards national economic development far back after World War II, especially within the wake of our enormous resources. Since Nigeria's independence, prioritizing national development and transformation policy has been made not only difficult but a complex project arising from multiplicity of issues and factors in the entire gamut of development. Indeed, developing the Nigerian nation is inundated with multifaceted problems. Hence, reforming Nigeria's education system for national transformation has become an uphill task to many successive governments. Paradoxically, the Nigerian nation has been abundantly blessed with awesome and avalanche of potentials, both natural, material, and human resources. However, the nation has remained in captivity of unfortunate coincidence of many sociopolitical issues arising from near absence of good governance, security, industrial and technological development over the years. It is again this backdrop that the ASBI Commission report of 1969 submitted to the federal government of Nigeria constituted by extension the foundation for prioritizing a sound national development and transformation within the framework of the nation's developmental needs. The The same report examines salient issues that were fundamental to national development, such as higher education in Nigeria, as a priority approach to giving directional guide towards the pursuance of national development, anchored on manpower training and development of human resources in Nigeria. Indeed, the Commission's reports form the basis as a matter of priority for most of the educational programs of Nigerian government. The same report led to the establishment of National Universities Commission, NUC, meant to provide what was referred to as balanced development for attainment of Nigerians' national need priority in 1974. Indeed, the mandate of a reformed education system that will translate to a transformed Nigerian nation has been most emphatically communicated within the framework of a democratic process. Undoubtedly, a reformed education system underscores the pathway to national development and transformation, because education itself has been described as a pathfinder to a nationally developed society. A reformed education system also is very significant in many ways to achieving national development. It is therefore the focus of this paper to establish a nexus between a reformed education system and a nationally developed and transformed Nigerian society. That's our background. Now let's explicate some concepts and do some discussions. Reforming or reformation. In a literal sense, reforming Nigerian education system simply means changing or repositioning Nigerian education program for relevant response that drive national development. Etymologically, reform stands for eradication of abuses in existing system, thus bringing improvement in the system or improving a system in order to get rid of unacceptable habits or practices. Forerunner and Okoli cited in Qua reform is defined as a deliberate attempt to change both A, the structure or procedure of the public bureaucracy, i.e., reorganization of the institutional aspect. So when you talk about reformation, you are talking about improving the structural arrangement, the institutional framework that produces the manpower that translates national transformation. It also has to do with changing the habit and behavior of the operators of a given political system, a bureaucratic system, an institutional system that produces the result that manifests into national transformation. That is what we are exactly talking about. Our education system has to change. We have to reposition our institutional structure. We have to change the attitude and behavior of the people that work inside the system. As a professor, I have been external examiner to so many universities, and I have seen what universities' campuses look like vis-a-vis our own. And so we need to do a serious reformation to structure our institutions. Federal government have been doling out money in tranches to tertiary institutions by way of ETF and PDTF for development of infrastructural facilities in institutions. Ebonyi State in 2010 to 2012 had 3.4 billion on need assessment. But the question is, where has it been established? At least a little move to Federal Polytechnic, Onwanafikpo, will tell you that we have an institution there that represents a higher school. A little move to College of Education, Ikwo, beyond what you see on the main road. If you get inside, you see a structural development that portends a higher institution. But the Ebonyi State University, over 16 years, you cannot establish a place called a university campus. We need to change the habit. We need to change the behavior. We need to change the institutional structure so that we can now be sure we're talking about a university. Just about 3 years now, I've constantly examined students at Anambra State University, Ibariam campus. The design of the university campus alone tells you that this is a university. So education. The educational processes and programs of a given nation are embedded in her education system and are directed towards achieving what a nation perceives as development. Put differently, the education system of a nation is the entire value system that is estimated for the developmental needs, desired to bring about the multidimensional process of man's efforts to master and subjugate the natural forces of his environment to ensure improved living. It therefore means that with inappropriate estimation of developmental values, a given education system may be operating without the desired result because the circumstances may be at variance with the developmental operations and expectations of or goals of the society. So when you talk about education system, you are talking about the entire gamut of the educational programs that has developed a value system which are translated by way of learning to the younger generation that will continue that society in her expectation of the value system that needed to be developed. That's exactly what we are talking about. So we have a system. We have a developed desired value system that we need to translate. And the translation has to come to the next generation that will take up Nigerian society. So what exactly do we need to have? That is what we teach in our various disciplines. Beginning from the teacher himself is a bundle of values. And that is why when you look at some lecturers and teachers, you ask yourself, do they have any need to come to higher institution? Because in themselves there's no value. They are a bundle of vices. They are not transmitting any value. The entire curriculum is separated from themselves. And so we need to change such people. We need to change such practices so that we'll be able to present to the entire generation that will continue with the Nigerian nation tomorrow those values we expect. Then education itself. Education has been accepted globally as a veritable instrument for both social transformation and national development. Indeed, contemporary Western technology presents education as an index of national development, as reflected even in Nigeria's much-touted Millennium Development Goals. But it is against this backdrop that the nation development is equated with its education programs, since education itself directs what a given society perceives as development. Western intellectualism presents to our continent, the African continent, the concept of education as a process of engaging in schooling and school-related activities of the literacy and numerics and their associated intellectual activities, attitudes and behaviors. The Western concept of education, which is incidentally taken as a popular, dominant, and commonly encountered in the Western education system, deliberately implies, as it assumes, that before the advent of the Europeans, Africans had no education or education system. Not only is this assumption inglorious, but it is also misleading, as it is entirely a misconception of the Western Hermetic hypothesis of the African culture and origin. Meanwhile, education is seen as all the conscious processes and activities, both institutionalized and uninstitutionalized, organized and unorganized, graded and ungraded, literate and non-literate, which are meant to assist succeeding generations of members of a society to acquire the corpus knowledge, values, attitude, beliefs, mindset, skills, central tendencies and orientations, which are seen as representing the proper way of life in the given time and place of the people. It is a means of organizing the individual self and the social life into a discipline, stable and meaningful unity. Education consists of methodological socialization of the younger generation and the process in which an individual acquires the physical, moral, social capacities demanded of him by the group into which he is born and with which he must function. The most genuine concept of education to this paper is that education is a process of all-round development of the child, equipping him or herself with the expected approved knowledge, traits, values, skills, and worldviews that would make for a meaningful life and well-being within a given society and time. In another sense, education is a systematic process of transmitting a people's culture from one generation to the next generation as applicable within the epoch. A nation's education system is potent with many ethics and values, skills, competencies, technologies, methodological procedures, cultures, norms, and modes of living, which, if fully developed, can drive national development severally. A fully developed education system is therefore seen as a prerequisite for economic, social, political, cultural, and technological development of a nation. Furthermore, a fully developed education system can drive home technological transfer, utilitarian knowledge, and technical skills for national development. And then the question is, why has our own education system failed to achieve this? And that is why we are here. That's exactly why we are here. You have passed through primary, secondary, and possibly tertiary education. Is there any value? Is there any competence? Is there any skill? Is there any knowledge that you can exhibit that can give you a position in Nigerian society? Not just placing food on your table. Has any level of education you have acquired added thing to your social life, economic life, and cultural life? And so if there is none, it means you have not been educated. You had only been schooled. There are so many schooled, uneducated illiterates who have passed through several levels of education. They had only gone to school, but they have not been educated. Now let's look at Nigerian education in perspective. Before now, Africa and Nigeria inclusive were bequeathed with knowledge-based type of education in the 3 R's without the requisite intricacies of technological and skill-oriented type of education. Africa were not exposed to a type of education that engendered self-reliance and national development because colonialism never conjured any developmental initiative to the African world. So Africans were enmeshed in rote learning, arithmetic and language interpretation for the missionaries, equipping us only to aid them in exploiting our endowed human and natural resources for their Western metropolitan industries. Hence, the colonial education bequeathed to the Africans or Nigerians was to produce clerks, catechists, office messengers, and at most, personnel officers for the purpose of keeping records. It was at this juncture that the issue of national development began to occupy space in the political discourse of African scholars and nations, especially during the years of independence, because the colonial government were not interested in matters of national development. So the type of education we had during the colonial era was the education that taught us how to say catechism, how to interpret their religious matters, the popular Ichoku drama, where the man interprets the white man's language, and the ones he could not interpret or say, Nandi Awara Amargo. With their type of education, our mindsets of the worldview were limited, less developed, and without critical thinking for innovation and creativity. On this, at least, any educated Nigerian by then only ended up in seeking for white-collar jobs without indeed any professional expertise or skill of personal creativity or innovativeness. The resultant effect of such education is the present production of unemployable youths, uneducated school leavers, and graduates that have constituted themselves into a guard of criminals, kidnappers, armed bandits, social promiscuitors, human and child traffickers, and hired killers around our urban and rural areas in Nigeria and Ebonyi State. Then let's talk about national development. The indigenous political elite used the lack of attention to national development as a point against the colonial authorities and as a justification for the demand for independence. The promise of national development by them became also an incentive for eliciting the support of the masses of the indigenous population against the continued existence of colonialism. You will recall, in the 40s, during the nationalist struggle, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the whole effort was that the colonial masters never thought of giving us an independent political economy. They only exposed us to the periphery of national life. And so they were not concerned about giving us national development. So African scholars and nationalists used the concept of national development as a means of garnering support from the rest of Africans to come together to fight against colonialism. In Nigeria, for example, the masses were promised to expect abundant life after independence. Specifically, they were promised, among other things, good roads, potable water, electricity, good housing, clean and safe environment, as well as health and educational facilities to wipe away diseases and ignorance. However, most of the African leaders then took the issue of national development as a political slogan and tool to discredit the colonial authorities rather than a socioeconomic engineering instrument for social transformation. But at independence, the social realities on ground compelled most of them to initiate some development programs. Again, in Nigeria, the 1962 to 1968 National Development Plan was the first put in place to address some basic social and infrastructural promises of that time. That program made some significant achievements and laid the initial infrastructural foundations for national development in the country. This was in spite of the incursion of the 1967 to 1970 Civil War and the limitations caused by the inadequate supply of indigenous professional and technical skill needed to manage its implementation. Fundamentally, national development program simply means giving comprehensive transformation plan to all the sectors of our national lives to create a socioeconomic viable state within the context of our human and material indices with a view to meeting up the challenges of the 21st century global development. To this end, Everest, as cited in Okpata 2004, sees development as a widely participatory process of directed social change in a society intended to bring about both social and material advancement for the majority of the people through gaining greater control over environment. For literal scholars, development is concerned as an all-embracing, multidimensional process involving man in his political, economic, social, cultural, and psychological relations, among others, in his effort to master and subjugate nations and natural forces of his environment to ensure improved living. Development means the attainment and qualitative realization of a state of affairs characterized by adequate and equitable distribution of social services, quantitative human happiness and welfare, and mastery of its environment, as well as free individual participation in the affairs of the state, or simply the satisfaction of the basic needs in an economically, politically, and structurally transformed society. So when you are talking about national development, you are talking about a society that has provided a multidimensional approach to the survival of man, both in its natural and national forces. A system that has touched sectoral improvement, including education, including politics, including economics, including culture, including social life, so that if that given a balanced position, that a man comes out not only having food on his table, but he can also think outside the box and be creative. The national transformation. The modern Nigeria of today is in dire need of national transformation, as well as reforms that have to impact on our attitude to work, ethical and value orientation, and create patriotic minds and love for one another. Indeed, our orientation towards governance should anchor on democratic values of transparency, institutional development, social welfare, and security of life and property. Increased food production and security, poverty reduction, as well as commitment to infrastructural facilities in the rural communities and urban centers, as well as attack on youth unemployment. In the language of former President Goodluck Jonathan, in his sectoral outline of National Transformation Agenda, focus was placed on two concrete aspects of development to include job creation and renewal. We can accept the synonym of national transformation as national economic development and planning, which is akin to our search for national development through the instrumentality of reform education system. President Goodluck Jonathan, in situating his transformation agenda then, rightly started by articulating the bane of the past agenda in the previous administration. The 3 C's are as recurrently lacking as our recurrent expenditure. Mr. President, by his emphasis on transformation, has revised the rules of the engagement into our existing problems. Thus, great opportunities exist to reorder our priorities and position ourselves well for national development. Indeed, the transformation pledged by Mr. President, which ran his campaign in 2011, is a strong word, not a mere palliative. It is a mandate for a radical, structural, and fundamental rearrangement and reordering of the building blocks of the Nigerian nation. It portends a fundamental reappraisal of the basic assumptions that underlie our reforms and development efforts over the years. Indeed, since independence till date, the tempo of nation building and national development has not really changed much. An assessment of the Nigerian development over some decades now is as observed by a renowned scholar, Professor Chinedu Nebo, and I quote, "With a history colored by ethnic rivalry, civil war, coup d'etat, religious intolerance, and gross misappropriation of public funds, the act of governance in a multi-ethnic nation like Nigeria has defied many simplistic solutions. Nigeria exists as a bride whose husband travels on an urgent call on their wedding night, and years after is yet to return. Many years after, other nations have moved on. Nigeria is yet to move on. With each new government, brilliant documents of national development plans are written and published, some with World Bank endorsement, like the NEETs, but little is done by way of implementation." He concluded, "Nigeria's story is a sad one, often retold. As a matter of fact, Nigeria's story is the hottest selling content from homegrown jokes by stand-up comedians. We have deteriorated into lack of national drive for national transformation, that laughing at ourselves has become our favorite sort. Unquote. It is against this backdrop that there is a dire need to reform Nigerian education system that will respond to the developmental needs of our technological backward nation in an era of rapid globalization. To this end, our paper begs for answers to the following questions. 1. What do we need to reform in Nigerian education? How do we reform, and what? What do we want to achieve in our education reform? Who should initiate education reform? Then we have the following answers. What do we reform in our education system? 1. Institutional structures and technologies. We need to reform our structures, the technologies with which we pass our values to the next generation. You see, when people talk about free education, I begin to ask myself, round about the whole globe, is there anything like free education? The answer is no. What is given free by government is not free even on the part of government. They build structures. They employ teachers. They establish laboratories and libraries, and they equip them. There is a capital expenditure on that. Even on the part of the parents and the benefactor of this education, they sew school uniform for their children and what? They buy books and also provide snacks to these children. So where lies the free education? So we need to reform our institutional structures and the technologies with which we impact our national values. Individuals need to be reformed. The learner, the teacher, the government, and the parents, all critical stakeholders of education need be reformed. For some of you who are students, your attitude to lecture should change. As a lecturer, you come to a faculty-based course, you have up to 500. And while you are teaching, some people are at the back, pinging, chatting, discussing, and possibly gossiping the lecturer. And at the end, they want to make an A without effort. I've had occasions of hearing from my graduate students on youth service, Prof, how can we get that to your textbook? How can we get the other handout you gave to us? Incidentally, sir, I am asked to teach in College of Education or Polytechnic. I said, there you are. Because you were not serious when I was teaching you. You now see the need to look for my textbook and for my handout. Sincerely speaking, the first textbook I produced was 75% out of my lecture note while I was undergraduate. And so, our attitude as learners should change. I've talked about changing the attitude of our teachers. I have often told colleagues that the student-lecturer relationship does not end on campus. It goes beyond there. A student can connect you internationally. On several occasions, students have paid the flight ticket of lecturers at the airport. Incidentally, coming across your student whom you thought sometime, Prof, where are you going? Doc, where are you going? I'm traveling out of Nigeria. He pays your ticket because of the relationship you have had with him on campus. The same student you thought had a plan that you'd be kidnapped and killed because of the way you handled him while on campus. The attitude of the teachers should change. This collecting of 5,000 and 3,000 does not help matters. Beyond that, who are you to the student? You know, the colonial capitalist system talks about a society that is atomized. You pay for my service, I give you my service, and we go away. That's exactly what some people are doing on campus. Okay, pay 5,000 naira and have a seat, and he goes away. It doesn't matter. But if you sit down to teach a student and cause him to know why he should have a C or a B or an A, he goes out to remember you forever. I am a typical example of the people that taught me. Because when my lecturers were teaching me, I was modeling them. And I knew they gave me what I wanted without asking me for a kobo. Our parents should also be reformed. 1998, I was to coordinate JAMB exam in girls' Akaliki. While I was there, a parent came with her daughter and cornered me and said, "Oga, I want you to do everything to help my daughter pass this JAMB." I sent him packing and said, "If at the JAMB level you are following this girl like this, what will you do when he enters into the university?" Some people are paying and sorting for their children to pass exam in the university. You are not doing them any good. And for some parents, they are not careful about what their words do on campus. Some have desired their to become permanent student. Make him not graduate to come and meet me here. He's been troublesome. So what he needs is for me to pay money into his account. Let him stay there. Whether he's passing or not passing is not my business, provided he's away from home. That is not it. We must know what our children are doing on campus. For some of you, taking Ebonyi State University for example, you came in here to do pre-degree when pre-degree was invoked as only means, a better means of getting education. You couldn't pass pre-degree. You stayed back and turned your program into work and study. But you never told your parents that you are doing work and study. And by the time you graduated, expecting that you go for service, you go and tell one lie why you are not going for service, because any program that is not regular does not fit for youth service. So these are the kind of things. This kind of wrong attitude should all change. Government on their part also will have a part to play. Funding of education. They should fund education institutionally, providing the institutional framework and the right policy program that will make education thrive. Because the policy they make affect education positively or negatively. How do we reform? Education is the principal method through which societies transmit knowledge from one generation to another, learn how to develop and accumulate knowledge, preserve certain values, and transform others and introduce social change in form of new ideas and attitude. Our method should be aggressive, progressive, and with indigenous but technological approach. We need to use our people, our technology and indigenous curriculum, as we need to introduce technological-based education, and so develop our people with utilitarian education that is societally relevant and culturally significant to our time and needs. However, this approach does not presuppose a total break from our hitherto British modeled education curriculum because of the need for sociocultural relativism and interdependence in global system. There's no way we can break from the British type because culture is relative. And that is exactly what we learn in education system. The culture of our people, how it can integrate with that of other nations because we're already under the wind of globalization. So we cannot break outrightly. We cannot become an independent nation. And of course, in intergovernmental and international relations, no nation stands on its own. So we therefore need to reform the following: ethics and values. We need to change our values and our attitude to work. What do you want? It is not immediate, finished goods. You should not be looking for fish rather than learning how to catch the fish. Today we are all in a hurry, yes. We are in a technology-based era. But let us bend down. For the Igbo man will say, Ikuroto gbajieji ihunatana guputia. Let's settle down. First of all, plan your priority. What is your vision in life? We also need to reform the technological orientation. Our technological orientation. The society of today is no more knowledge-based. It is skill, competencies, technology. We can improve on our own technology. Let me ask us, all this wind of regionalization going on in Nigeria now, assuming we go back to 1946 regional government, what will Southeast be known for? We are talking about Biafra. Assuming we are granted to secede, what shall be our own technology? Nigeria, the Biafrans fought the 1967-70 war with indigenous technology. Today, that technology has disappeared. If you go to Oka, hardly can you get blacksmithers. No more. If you see people weaving baskets at Ntezi, you laugh at them. But these are the things that will make us exist. Let's go back to those era of handcraft. When we were in primary school, if you bring 10 kobo for your handwork, your teacher will whip you very, very well. He will expect you to bring woven rope, basket, broom, and so many other things. Let's go back to indigenous technology. Vocational skill acquisition. Let us consider vocation. Oftentimes you see in the tellers a graduate becoming a mechanic, becoming a vulcanizer. His vocation. He has his degree, probably second class upper, but he has taken a vocation. Do you even know that professionals now go to undertake some apprenticeship? Hello? We are talking about skill acquisition. The thing that will put food on your table should you not be employed. The economy has gone down and has gone bad. No more employment even. All this story of youth empowerment, I don't even know how working it is, nationally and statewide. But you can employ yourself. If white collar job closes up now, civil and public service closes, so many people will die the next month. We also need to reform on ICT education. That is the in thing now. That is what is in vogue. With ICT, you can do all manner of things except criminality. Except criminality. intensive professionalization. Intensive professionalization. I want to encourage Pastor Prince. This is all about what we are talking about. What area can we identify you with? Traditional method of knowledge through skill acquisition, wide curriculum structure and content. Evolve total education that has touched physically, morally, and spiritually. Let there be a rebate. Some of you are crooked in your ways. Some of you are too criminally minded. In fact, if we throw 1 million naira now here for us to share, you can see stampede. Discipline with money. My brother, if 1, 2, 3, 4 persons want to eat that 1 million, let them eat it. In the next 1 week, they'll be hungry. Integrity. Build for yourself integrity. So that you'll be known for something. How many people have encountered you in 1 or 2 relationships? What have they said? That is what we need to reform. Our education should bring a rebate. What do we want in our education reform? The wind of globalization is a cultural integration that implicitly compels nation states to key into both trade and economic liberalization. Hence, international relations determine to a large extent the educational programs and policies of nations against the scholarly views that national policies determine foreign relations. It is against the backdrop of this global trend that we model Nigeria's education system to leverage us into global economic program, which is technology driven. To this end, it is important we consider the following areas of reform. New learning environment. We should produce new learning environment or reform educational institution that compares competitive and comparative education. There are certain private universities you see on the telex, and you just wish you are admitted immediately. True of us. That's the kind of thing we are talking about. Let's change the environment of our learning. When we do this school, even if you are a genius, you come back with our class. True of us. The pioneers of Ebonyi State University, the pioneer graduate of Ebonyi State University in Isheke will tell you what I mean. There's nothing to desire that place. But for the lecturers. But for the lecturers. If you see the synthetic nature of a campus, if you see the aesthetic environment, if you see the lecture theaters, if you see the library, you can desire to finish first, second, third degree at a time, not coming out. That's what we're talking about. We need to reform our institutions to look like institutions. That is where the government comes into. A changed psychological man that is all-round educated. Some people, if you touch them on mathematics, they will take you far. But after mathematics, he doesn't even know how to wash his cloth. His house is not clean. Even inside himself is smelling. But he can take you to any length in mathematics. Touch him in econometrics, he's there. But give him money to report back how he spent it, 0. We're talking about all-round education. Don't just become a mathematician, a political scientist, an economist, and every other thing, 0. Some of our young ladies are not marriable. Yet, but when they dress and, wow, I must go for this one. Follow her back to her house. He will ask you to stay back, let her dress her bed. The house is in disarray. And ask her to go and cook for you. is another story altogether. I don't know whether you have seen couples who are married, they go to eateries to eat. What a shame. He has wedded a girl who's supposed to enter into a kitchen and prepare food. They're still going to eatery. The girl's hands are filled with nails. She can't wash. She can't cook. That is not the type of thing we need in a reformed education system. An industrially technical man with every sense of entrepreneurship. You have been educated. No more literary education. You have an aspect of your competence that is based on vocation. A devout man committed to the virtue of hard work, honesty and integrity in public life. Today, people have different intention of going to public position. And incidentally, if you're in a public office now, forget it because there's nothing to steal. There's absolutely nothing to steal. Your salary is cut. You have to sacrifice. Nothing. We're looking for men who have service as a virtue. People who can serve our nation and take us to the next level. And not people have come to loot. Over time, you hear in the network news people who are taken to EFCC for 3.5 billion, trillion, one human being. But if you are given 500,000, you come out from school. But an individual has embezzled trillions. A man of self-discovery. Have you discovered yourself? What are you? A man of adventures. A patent achiever. Discovering and building things that no man has ever tried. Venturing into gray areas in life. And you have made an achievement. That is what a reformed education should give to us in Nigeria. Who should initiate education reform? Who? The individual citizen of Nigeria and Ebonyi State. Individuals. Initiate a type of education that will place you into a value system. Our families and homes. It is high time parents stop telling their children, go and read medicine, while he has his 5 credits in religion, literature, and Igbo. Go and become an engineer. I want to answer an engineer's mother, but he cannot pass mathematics. We should be able to follow the educational training of our children to place them where they're supposed to be. Some children have been made to write WAEC for several years, not because they cannot pass, but their parents have pushed them into core subject areas they have no comparative advantage. So families should initiate education reform. Churches on the pulpit should talk to our youth. I want to thank God what is happening in churches today. There's a lot of workshops and seminars, youth conventions, where people are told what the future holds for them. Churches should do more. Preachers should do more to engage our youths in vocational education. The government also have their own part to play. They should initiate functional education. And that is what the Ebonyi State government is doing now. It is not all about going to learn English language and this, So many people are there overseas under state scholarship. The state government is reviewing this scholarship. Somebody is in overseas reading English. What has English to do with the economy of Ebonyi State? Somebody has gone to read. And if you hear the things they are reading, as a professor of public administration, do I need to go to England to read public administration? And the public administration of England is different from that of Nigeria. And so we have what we call comparative public administration. Let's study the ecology of Nigerian public administration here, and it will be relevant to reposition our public administration. So why do I go outside? So people who are reading this type of courses are made to fend for themselves or come back and change their program. We need utilitarian education. Education that will make you function on your own if government is no more providing employment. So that is what we need. The civil society. The civil society must be able to organize advocacy and campaign programs to tell people where the wave of globalization is pushing us to, so that we can key into it. The same thing, NGOs and development partners should help us reform education, either by way of funding, etc. I want to conclude. The conclusion of this paper is summed up in the fact that a reform educational system in Nigeria and Ebonyi State, in particular, is not only a driver of national development and transformation, but is also bound to produce inexhaustible results, which is capable of making Nigeria nation a capacity-based economy, and thus realizing not only the objective of this paper, but also of this summit. Some of the results of the reform education system are as hereunder listed, but not limited to these. 1. A reform education will provide for us stable, competitive, and strong political economy. It will provide for us self-reliant, self-discovered, and self-respected and disciplined citizens. A reformed education system will increase our national GDP, resulting to economic growth. It will reduce poverty, unemployment, and increase self-employment. It will reduce crime wave, criminality, militancy, and terrorism. It will provide for us honesty men, accountable men in public office, and will provide good governance and respect for the rule of law. A reformed education system will provide consistent security of life and property. It will drive home for us national development and transformation. It will provide for us healthy socio-cultural relations among ethnic nationalities. It will cause us to have equality in social relation of labor. Today, I don't know whether you have taken a little trip to that space opposite stadium. You can see what Karl Marx called the proletarians. People who only have their labor to sell. They will be there from 7 a.m., some of them till 3 a.m., looking for who will come and hire them. If you have a car and you have a mistake of braking there, they will surge. And so, economically, incomes are not equally distributed. The position we are in the social relation of labor has made some people to only sell labor, while some other people have the means of production. You see these people that drive Mack and tippers. If they go to Sharon and have a full load of tipper, it takes at least 50,000 naira for a chipping, half inch. And at least they would have done 10 times tipping for the owner of the tipper. At 50,000 naira a trip, times 10, 500,000. But at the end, he's giving 2,500. That is what Karl Marx calls surplus value. That is the kind of social relation of labor we have in Nigeria. But a reform education system will give us a balance. A free and egalitarian society where everybody is somebody. That is what a reform education system will give us. I wish to conclude this paper by borrowing from the words of Jimmy Carter of America, and I quote, that our nation's birth was a milestone in the long quest for freedom, but the old and brilliant dream which excited the founders of the nation still waits its consummation. I have no new dream to set forth today, but rather urge a fresh faith in the old dream. The America or Nigerian dream endures. We must once again have full faith in our country and in one another. Let our recent mistakes bring a resurgent commitment to the basic principles of our nation. For we know that if we disperse our own government, we have no future. Thank you very much.
We believe you've been transformed by the wonders of God's Word. For additional information about us, you can visit our website at www.princetonhills.org. You can also send us a mail at info@princetonhills.org or call 0806 499 5029, 0812 511 3214. Princeton Hills Ministries, raising global leaders.